Rahul Dravid outperforms Virender Sehwag in every form of cricket. Though I think I find it ridiculous that people believe the market has got so much wisdom, the cleanliness of a promoter. If a promoter is a thug, I haven't yet found a company in India which manages to do more than two things well.
Hello everyone, you're with Business Insider. This is Sriram Iyer. Welcome to one more special broadcast today, and we have someone really special with us. Someone who's does not lure you with stock tips and stop losses. He stimulates your brain with some meticulous research, and someone who's more articulate than most of the other market gurus that we see. All of that comes together in some very priceless perspectives, and we are very glad to have him with us today. But we are disappointed that it took us so long to get Saurabh Mukherjee to Business Insider, India's fastest growing news platform on the digital front. We are sort of going through a great sort of moment in history as far as digital media is concerned, and we are very happy to have Saurabh Mukherjee with us, who's going to tell us more such businesses, more such sectors. Thank you, Saurabh, for taking time out and joining us here. Talking about how articulate you are, and I was reading your latest newsletter and your cricket analogies, and bringing together lethargy in compounding. Fascinating read nonetheless. Over the years, I have really grown as a journalist. As perspectives on market have been to a great extent shaped by a lot of your writing. Thank you, and of course, congratulations. Let's talk about. I mean, we wanted to do this last week, but for some reason we couldn't find time. And at that time, I wanted to discuss about Unlock 3.0, whether it was possible or not. But essentially, some of the other guests we had in your place last week said that market has already priced in Unlock 7.0. So, is that something that you concur with?
No, I think I find it ridiculous that people believe the market has got so much wisdom, price in so much of the future. If the market had so much wisdom, price in so much of the future, people like me would be out of a job very quickly. So I think the thing to realize is share prices of any stock, whether it be great companies like the ones we have in our portfolio or say more mediocre companies, share prices in our country tell us nothing. The P multiple of a stock has zero information value, right? It has zero predictive value. Whether a P is high or low, or a price to book is high or low, is not going to tell you or me anything about a company. And in that regard, even whether we're an Unlock 3.0 or 4.0, we're going to be no wiser than that. The simple way we've thought about investing in our country is try to understand firstly the cleanliness of a promoter. If a promoter is a thug, and most I would say 80% of listed company promoters in our country are a little naughty. Yeah. If the promoter is naughty, you're not going to make money, whether it's Unlock 1.0 or Unlock 9.0, whether the P multiple is 6 or 60. If the promoter is not going to make any. So I think first part of analyzing companies in India necessarily is a fair bit of forensics on the integrity of the man or woman running the show. I think the second element is, does the product have a large market in our country? This is a country where the median per capita income is well below $1,000 per annum, and therefore, unless you're selling essential products in our country, you're necessarily catering to a very niche segment. So, look for products or services which have a large market, right? And the third thing, the hardest thing to do, is figure out, is there a barrier to entry around the company which can make it very, very difficult to compete with the company, right? We shy away from investing in Indian companies who have to contend with heavy competition. You cannot make money in India if you're in a competitive field, whether it's Unlock 1 or Unlock 9, it doesn't matter. Competition destroys you.
So what about a company like Reliance, which is a competitor in possibly 7 out of 10 spaces that you are looking at? From telecom to oil and gas to retail to anything that you look at, you have a behemoth like Reliance Industries owned by Mukesh Ambani, Asia's richest man. How do you see competition sort of evolving in that space, and how does it affect the other companies in those spaces?
Sriram, if you look at conglomerates in India generally, not just Reliance, you can take an L&T, you can take an Hindalco, you can take an M&M. You'll see conglomerates in our country have historically struggled to generate a return on capital above their cost of capital. Right, the simple sign of an effective company which is able to build barriers to entry is your return on capital is consistently above your cost of capital. In simple English, you're generating free cash flow. Conglomerates in our country have struggled to do that, and and I can extend this to even say the great Tata Sons, right? Barring TCS, it's difficult for them to generate free cash flow. And I think what that tells us is over the last 10 years or so, the Indian economy has become far more competitive. And what's happening with all of these conglomerates, all of these mighty conglomerates, who in a way created the India that you and I live in, right? The Tata, the Birlas, the Reliances, and L&T, the Mahindras, right? They built the country we live in. But in the modern Indian paradigm, they're finding it hard to generate free cash flow. They have one or two businesses which chug out lots of cash, and they have 4 or 5 businesses which guzzle up the cash. Net, you as an investor are left none the wiser. And hence our preference, therefore, is to focus on companies which do one or two things well, right? I haven't yet found a company in India which manages to do more than 2 things well, right? Okay. The first time, I'm looking forward to the day where I can find an Indian company which can do 3 things well, right? So we've found, so for example, Marico does cooking oil and hair oil well, right? Page Industries does undergarments and now loungewear well, right? But as soon as you give them 3 things to do, as soon as you give us great Indian company 3 things to do, that's one thing too many. Okay. And in that context, the conglomerates are best shied away from.
So you are shying away from the conglomerates?
I think the when they generate free cash flow, yours truly will happily look at them. But until such day that
but that is an opportunity missed, especially with a stock like Reliance in the last 3-4 months.
So think about it like this, Sriram. If a company is
and not just last 3 months, last 3 years as well, right? It's been
if a company is a consistent compounder, it'll keep compounding in the years to come. I see the free cash flow, we will compound with them. Right? Okay. With any company, and I'm deliberately focusing on all the mighty names, right? The Tata, Birlas, the Mahindras, the Reliances. These are all mighty names. They are the founders of modern India.
Okay.
Free cash flow is something they find hard to generate. It's elusive. It's elusive because they can very quickly see with all of these firms, 1 or 2 bits fire great guns, right? And then the other bits guzzle up the cash. Net, you as a minority investor are left sort of looking for consistent compounding.
Is that a reason why you left ITC as well? You moved out of ITC.
So ITC in a way is a good exemplification of that, in the sense our reckoning was, as I said, we found companies which can do 2 things well, and our reckoning was that ITC does do obviously does cigarettes very well. I think ITC's cigarette cash machine is the mightiest cash machine I've ever seen, right? In FMCG, they were increasingly being successful. I think they will continue building the FMCG franchise under the able stewardship of Mr. Puri. I think the recent acquisition is probably the sign of many more such successful FMCG acquisitions to come. But where we were not able to convince ourselves is with this twin-cylinder engine, we couldn't convince ourselves with this twin-cylinder engine, ITC could gun out 20% earnings. That's the basic test a stock needs to meet for us. We need to see free cash flow generation, which gets reinvested to give us 20% earnings compounding. The free cash flow generation at ITC is mighty. It's probably the mightiest cash generator independent India has seen.
I will take this time to explain to our viewers who are a little stumped by high terms like compounding and price to equity, price to earnings. Let's look at it. Let's listen to it from how Saurabh Mukherjee articulates it himself in his newsletter. He talks about he likes Rahul Dravid over Sehwag. He likes Pete Sampras over Andre Agassi. The way he thinks is essentially, somebody who's a consistent performer. And we used to joke about how Rahul Dravid is essentially like the government employee equivalent, in the cricket team. He goes out to bat in the morning at 9 a.m., comes back at 5 p.m. and he's consistently there. He doesn't stay for a minute longer, doesn't reach there a minute before. So Saurabh, is that the sum and substance of what you are trying to say?
I think absolutely. You nailed it on the head, right? And if you see, in our latest newsletter, we've shown Rahul Dravid outperforms Virender Sehwag in every form of cricket. And the more abbreviated the format of cricket, more abbreviated the format of cricket, the greater Dravid superiority over Sehwag.
It's in 2020s India. This could get you, social media lynching. So Sehwag is a far more popular character on Twitter than
Both are retired, thankfully. Both are retired. Both are worthy coaches, coaching great franchises.
Absolutely,
But,
absolutely.
To be fair to Ashram, we put the analogy there in Coffee Can Investing, published 2 years ago. Both were playing at that time. And we put it in there, hoping for a little bit of social media publicity.
No, definitely. In fact, Saurabh, that is one thing you and I have in common in Business Insider. We try to do that. We don't try to talk to people in jargon. We try to keep it as simple as possible so that it reaches the maximum number of people. For far too long, conversation about markets, economy, and things that actually matter have been the fiefdom of the elites and the educated, whereas the large number of voters have been kept out of this conversation. We are constantly trying to bring them into this conversation.
So can I just take off on that? This is a lovely point you made, right? And if you notice, most conversations around investing, the fund manager sort of says, look, you need to trust me with your money because I have divine insight into value. God has uniquely qualified me to time the stock. Right? I will time the market. I will time the business cycle. I will time your entry into L&T, Hindalco, etc., and everything else you can read in the annual report, sir. But the market timing, you got to trust with me because I have providential skills in that regard. And so one of the things we've tried to push back on is this nonsense. If a fund manager claims he or she has market timing skills, then you should be suitably skeptical because market timing cannot be the basis for generating returns. All that any good fund manager anywhere in the world can do is do the diligence on, are the books regular or are the books good? Is the product something which is robust in demand in the real economy outside? And is the franchise moated? If a fund manager claims other providential skills, then I think your audience should question either their marbles or their integrity.
Absolutely. I mean, let's take off on that point and let's list out Saurabh Mukherjee's 11. Where all of them are Rahul Dravids.
So you want me to narrate the portfolio?
Oh, why not?
I won't narrate the portfolio. Let's discuss a few case studies which are in my book. So if I take say Unusual Billionaires,
like I could go on individual questioning, but then I would have consumed a lot more time. I would rather have you speak than me waste time on questions. Yeah.
Let's take Unusual Billionaires as the framework. So if you look at the 2016 book, right, and I'll go through the concepts in the book, and they've stood the test of time. You have their HDFC Bank, right? And our view in the book was and will remain that what Aditya Puri is leaving behind is a standard operating procedure driven business which has used SOPs to build a CASA franchise, build a Consto Capital franchise, which now to our estimation gives HDFC Bank funding at lower cost than the government of India. Right? So Shashi Jagdishan will be a worthy successor. He's been groomed extensively by the legend himself, and Shashi will be a worthy successor. But his job is made infinitely easier by this great franchise that he'll be inheriting, which has the lowest cost of funds of any bank in our country. Right? Remember, they're not paying 6% for their SA. They're not paying 6% for their SA. They're paying 4% for the SA. As a result, the lowest cost of funds amongst any private sector bank. Right? So that's the moat that HDFC Bank is built around. If you look at Asian Paints in that book, I've explained in that book and in subsequent discussions that what Asian Paints does is the paint itself is not extraordinary. Asian Paints is basically a tech logistics franchise. It's probably the world's best SAP implementation, and that enormously sophisticated big data and SAP integration gives Asian Paints a working capital cycle of 8 days. Right? You're a $22 billion paint company. You have 55% share. You have nearly 80,000 dealers. Your working capital cycle from raw material to cash in bank in 8 days. Just to put it in perspective, with the world's number 2 paint company, AkzoNobel, their Indian operation takes 100 days to to translate raw chemicals to cash in the bank. So Asian Paints is a moat around technology, right? So on and so forth. With all the great franchises in our country, right? Even if you go down the market cap spectrum, a Dr. Lal Path Labs, a Relaxo, the Page Industries, the moats in our country increasingly are built around rigor, extreme high levels of rigor in process, right? The Japanese taught us Kaizen. A small minority of Indian companies have basically adopted high levels of process rigor. And high process rigor in a chaotic country obviously translates into superior profitability, whether it's process rigor in an undergarment factory or in a high street bank, right?
So that list from 2016, which is Asian Paints, HDFC, Page Industries, are these the names that are still your favorites?
So our portfolio, our consistent compounder portfolio, churns by around 5 to 10% in a year, right?
Okay.
So in a given year, one or two names come out, one or two names go in. Basically,
and the latest one is HDFC Life Insurance.
HDFC Life has got in. You're clearly extremely well informed. HDFC Life went in, and herein lies our problem, right? I mean, obviously, HDFC Life went public a few years ago, but we worked on it for a couple of years before we could get a grip on the barrier to entry. The barrier to entry here is around technology, around data analytics, but we needed to convince ourselves that there is one, right? We can't just, management, obviously, you talk to any company management, they'll say we've built the world's greatest company. It's incumbent on us to go and check that and validate that, both from the financial statements and from primary data analysis, speaking to distributors, ex-employees, competitors, etc. And HDFC Life passed the filter and it entered our portfolio.
So this is something that you're holding on with a timeline of like 5 years, 10 years. What is the?
So all our investments are basically in finite period. I'm hoping they outlast me. We sell when one of the three criteria on which we bought, if one of the three get compromised, which is either around accounting quality or around essentiality of demand or around barriers to entry. If one of these three start crumbling, we think it's time to check out.
Okay. So I want to bring it back to a point that you made earlier about the cost of funds, right? Right now, I think that seems to be a problem in India. At least many would argue it is. That in a world where increasingly interest rates are turning negative, you have a repo rate of 4%, which is very low for a developing economy like India. But does that affect? I mean, what is it that is going to move the market now? Is it the fact that there is high yield in India, that returns are going to be high because of the same reason, that a repo rate is too high, and then of course a growing economy and all of that put together, or is it going to be a challenge? Let's talk about a startup company, right? Let's talk about a startup. If I were to raise money, should I go? Let me keep it simple. Should I go abroad because the investor there is getting money for cheaper, and therefore his ask will be lesser? And for that investor should come to India because the returns here are, from a good company will be 20% or more.
Right. So there is no point going cheaper. No, you're living in a global financial system, and you can see quite transparently that every single time in the last 40 years, America goes into recession. Every single time in the last 40 years, America goes into recession. With a year's lag, with a year later, India's economic boom begins. Right? It is 1:1 correlation. Why does that happen? Why does an American recession in year T lead to an economic recovery in India in T+1? Right? Two simple reasons. When the world's largest consumer of oil goes into recession, oil drops by 50 to 70%. That's a 3% of GDP stimulus to an oil importer like this. We've got that. That was the core of the PMFM stimuli 2 months or so. Right? They've kept 1% in the bank of that stimuli. I'm sure a smart journalist like you can guess why they've kept 1% in the bank. Now let's come to the second driver. Right? When America goes into recession, the US 10-year bond yield drops by 2 to 3%. Right? This time it's dropped by 3%. In Jan, it was 3%, 10-year bond yield in America. Now it's close to zero. RBI has cut by 2% so far. I think the RBI has abundant headroom to cut by another 100 bips in the next 12 months. Right? But even before they've done that, you can see what's happening in the bond market. So let's take, say, a company we're discussing 10 minutes back, RIL. RIL is borrowing in the bond market at the lowest rates I have seen RIL or indeed or NTPC borrowing in the last 10 years or so. Right? If you're a credit-worthy borrower like an RIL or an NTPC, the bond market is bending over backwards to give you money. Ditto in, say, in the banking context, an HDFC Bank or a Bajaj Finance are getting money at super low rates. Bajaj Finance in the CP market, 5.5%, right? Where the challenge in our country is, if you are down the credit quality spectrum, you're not RIL, you're the number 3 telecom company in India, right? You're not Bajaj Finance, you're the number 6 NBFC in the country. Then your cost of funds are 200 bips higher. Hey, that's not going to change if you go to London. In London also, they know that you're the number 6 NBFC in India, right? So, in fact, the number 5, number 6 NBFC in India has tried to do exactly that. They thought that was Bombay mein paisa is expensive. Let me call up the folks in London. They might not know that I'm not the leading NBFC. But obviously, in a globalized economy, there is no arbitrage around that. So yes, if you go to borrow abroad, you'll get money 3 to 4% cheaper, but that is the exchange rate arbitrage anyway. Exchange rate premium is 3 to 4%. So effectively, you can try your luck in London or Singapore, but it's pretty much the same. There are no free lunches available in a financial system. The only way you can get your cost of funds sustainably lower, Bajaj Finance style or RIL style or HDFC Bank style, is build a moated franchise which chugs out heavy amounts of free cash flow, right?
Okay.
If you can do that, if you can build a powerful franchise. And
actually, on that note, with that kind of a philosophy in place, will you ever or have you ever bet on a disruptor?
No. So first point is, we are managing the savings of 3,000 families. So betting is a thought I can't even entertain. As soon as I feel like betting, I have to go and take a cold shower.
No, forget betting. And what I'm saying is, would you ever back a disrupting entity?
Disruptor also is another thought that I can't entertain, right? Again, 3,000 families, their life savings are with us, right? So our job is to bet on continuity, on consistency, right? Dravid again. My job is not to bet on a new debutant saying, boss, great Ranji track record. He will now be whacking it out of the park in one international cricket. My job is to give him 4 years in one day international cricket. Once he's proven as the next Virat Kohli, then Marcellus' team says, we've checked him out. He did well in school cricket, in college cricket, in Ranji cricket. After 4 years of international cricket, he's hitting it out of the park. Now Marcellus' consistent compounder portfolio puts HDFC Life in the book. That's our job. Our job is not to go to the Maidan tomorrow morning and look out for the next.
So no scouting,
No scouting, consistency, conservatism, low blood pressure, calmness, any thought of any.
Is that the Bengali Kolkata upbringing?
It's middle class darpok upbringing, boss.
One important question on the relative strength of companies and their ability to raise money. Why is Jio, 5 lakh crores worth and Airtel 3 lakh crores? Especially when it is a close enough competitor. There are no questions on its solvency. And can there be such a huge gap between Airtel and Jio?
I'm not a telecom expert. I honestly don't know. I'm not a telecom expert. What we noticed about Jio when I came to India in 08, at that time when I came to India in 08, Bharti Airtel was in its pomp in that time, right? 08, 9, 10, right? And yet, if you look at Bharti Airtel when it was at its pomp, right, 2004 to 14, that 10-year period pre-Jio, Bharti Airtel ruled the roost, the dominant telco in our country. In that 10-year period, growth in traffic on the network was, I remember, 40-45% per annum. It was astronomical growth in traffic on the network. And what I still remember through that era was earnings growth simply wouldn't fructify. The traffic would zoom through. Right, and this is something I've seen in the Indian airline sector as well. You take the best airlines in our country, passenger volumes zoom through, but there's no earnings growth, right? And that is an instant sign of a lack of barrier to entry. Because you don't have barriers to entry, your business volumes are booming, but alongside that, you're having to cut prices to deal with competition. As a result, your earnings growth is not fructifying. Another way of restating the same thing is your return on capital is not higher than your cost of capital, which means you cannot generate free cash flow, right? And on this metric, 90% of businesses in our country, listed or unlisted, struggle to cut it. This is in a way the acid test of consistent compounding. Can you put up a barrier to entry which allows you to generate earnings growth consistently? And most businesses, 90% of businesses in India, and I would say even in America, would fail in this regard.
The conversations around digital India are just ubiquitous. Everyone's talking about it. But nobody really knows where to go, right? How to get a share in this digital revolution that's happening? We have an info edge. Is that something that is part of your Rahul Dravid list, or is it part of the Sehwag list?
It forms part of some of our portfolios.
Yeah,
because of Naukri.com. Naukri.com is a super compounder.
Okay. And so yeah, talk to us more about internet businesses, where both tapped and untapped potentials. Where do you see opportunities?
Right. So I think the way to think about technology, the way we think about technology, is we're not so much interested in going to California. If you sort of put it in the Californian gold rush context, we're not going to California to dig for gold. Our job is to sell the overalls and the boots and the spades to the gold digger, right? So Asian Paints is a technology company. Only superficially is Asian Paints a paint company. Bajaj Finance is a big data analytics company. Superficially, it's an NBFC. And HDFC Bank is a high-tech company, right? It has a bank license, but it's a high-tech company. Dr. Lal Path Labs uses heavy amounts of tech to optimize the business, right? So it's basically like a high-tech retailer rather than a path lab. So our focus is on finding companies who use the available technology incredibly well, far more than anybody else, and they use that technology to put up walls, put up barriers to entry. Our desire is not to find the latest, greatest tech company. And those who are in that area of finding latest tech companies, right, they'll have to convince us and lots of other people that our latest tech companies can compete with Google and Facebook and Amazon in whichever segment they are in, right? So if tomorrow I launch a platform to sell financial research, not evident to me what comparative advantage I can bring to bear by launching an online platform for financial research, or indeed as an online stockbroker, right? So
and the same would hold true for a say media company.
Absolutely. So several industries, the industry now is global, and therefore to create an Indian challenger in a global industry, I'm not so sure how easy it will be. Maybe there are some people who can do it, but as I said, given our conservative mindset, we're not out there looking for them. Our job is to understand, has an HDFC Life used available technology to build moats around analytics and big data? The answer we believe is yes, and hence we are invested in HDFC Life. And as long as HDFC Life maintains its big data moat, and Bajaj Finance does the same, we stay happy investors.
Fantastic. And as a passing remark, the RBI policy is coming up. There are, I think, too many uncertainties globally speaking right now. People have not ruled out the possibility of a conflict, whether it is on the China-India border or on the South China Sea. There are tons of, of course, there is COVID, second wave, third wave. All of that is also going to play out. How much more conservative are you going to get over the rest of the year?
I loved it the way you said it, right? So I meet a lot of people from the world of media who boil the ocean. They'll start with global warming, then they go into religious issues, then caste issues, then border conflict, then COVID. By the time they're done, right, they've boiled the ocean on every single issue. We try to keep it simple. There's only three things that make money in India: clean promoter, essential product and service, high barriers to entry. Everything else, we seek pardon that we have no competence to comment on other matters. Only three things.
No, so I think what I'm trying to ask is how much of your fresh investment is going to stay in cash for, let's say, 6 months or a year before you think it's.
Our job is to invest. No, it's not to stay in cash.
No, I'm saying just 1%. Most fund managers do that.
So you keep 1% for account balancing reasons. It's not an asset allocation thing. Our portfolios are 99% invested. We keep 1% for housekeeping issues. But the point I'm making is we don't make cash calls, and we have immense admiration for these mighty intellects
who can time the market.
Yeah, who can time the market and who can oscillate between cash calls of 15-20% and 1%. We haven't been blessed with such skills. And while we're working on it, right? We're working on it, but we haven't yet convinced.
Okay, fantastic, Saurabh. Thank you so much for joining us. I hope you keep Business Insider as part of your reading material from time and again, and let us know if we are going wrong. We are obviously looking forward to feedback as well. And to all of those who are watching this special broadcast today, thank you for taking time out. I hope Saurabh's answers have enriched your perspective a lot more than what it was maybe at the start of this interview. Thank you for watching Business Insider. This is Sriram Iyer signing off.